Last night, what were you guys supposed to be working on? Okay, calculator worksheet number 1. If I just gave this to you and said, hey, go have fun, can someone find one of the problems that could have been a struggle? If I didn't give you the handbook, I just said, you have a calculator, here's homework, come back tomorrow. Is there any place that you or someone in your group might have gotten stuck? Kyle.
Intersection point
Number 2B. Okay, intersection point of the 2 lines. That's a little bit more complicated of a feature. Good. So intersection, that's a key word. We'll get back to that in a second. Where's another place that you could have gotten stuck? Yeah. The variable? Explain.
Like if you didn't know what the button was for when you're plugging in the equation.
Oh, good. Good. You could have gotten a little bit confused as to what they were saying. Maybe even, I don't know, I'm going to number 3A. If they just say, what are the zeros, aren't there 2 different variables that could be 0? Now, maybe that's not a big deal for you. Maybe you know there's a button, well, not a button, a menu in your calculator that literally has the word 0, and you're like, I bet it's that one. But otherwise, if you just read this and you didn't really know your calculator very well, you're like, x is 0 or y is 0, right? Yeah, so maybe even just figuring out what variable to be using or to be working with. Points of intersection comes back again. If you did know to use your calculator, I think there might be one other place you might get a little lost. How about the appropriate viewing window? Anybody have to play with their zoom a little bit? If you did, yeah, you have to play with your zoom a lot. And here's the sad thing. Wouldn't we love for these to be touchscreens? What would be nicer if they were touchscreens or we were using on your calculator or something? Couldn't you just pinch and zoom and be like, I wonder where it is? Just go look at. No, is it a touchscreen? That's why it's not more expensive than it is already, right? Can I let you use your phones and Desmos for quizzes and tests? Okay, so struggle is we're going to have to learn how to use this thing called a somewhat old-fashioned, although it's newer, calculator and how to manipulate it, especially with the zooms. Let's go ahead and go to our calculator handbook. We're going to come back to the worksheet. You're going to be able to check the answers by the end of class. So if you have a colored pen somewhere close, it's one of the school supplies, go ahead and grab it out. To be honest, I usually grade in blue just because red is kind of depressing. Technically, research shows that green is the calmest color to ease the anxieties and fears of students, but green pens, let's just say they're not easy to get, so I use blue because I like blue as a color. You can use blue, long story short. You can use purple, you can use green, you can use red. Yeah, I won't say any of that. But what I will say is you cannot use black to grade, and you cannot use gray to grade, and you cannot use pencil to grade for the whole year. Any reason why that you guys can think of? Why couldn't you use black or gray or pencil to grade? You're basically just filling in answers, or I can't see that you actually graded because it just looks the same. You have the worksheet number 1. What do you need? Oh, the handbook is in the locker? Why don't you just look at this one for today, okay? And then try to remember it next time. Let me grab you a book really quickly, too. All right, I want you guys to go ahead and in the handbook, I want you to quickly skim through the first section all the way up to number 1 and then do number 1. Wait, how do you do it? Get it in your calculator. And how do you show me that you did it? Sketch a little graph right next to number 1. Now, should you be doing it in pen? No, because this is going to be a resource for us all year. You want it to be right in math. What do we do if we think we might make a mistake? And so we're going to write it in pencil. That way we can erase it if we do make a mistake. Sound good? Okay, so have a colored pen ready, but not right now. Right now you're trying to do objective number 1, graphing the line and skimming the section. You don't have a book yet, right? Okay. Did you get one of these yesterday? Okay. What is this whole first section talking about? What button? The y equals button. What can we do with the y equals button? Can't we put in functions and graph them? Right? If you're brand new to the calculator, there's a lot to learn as far as what to use. Variable buttons, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. For those of you that have used the calculator for a while, some of this can go quite quickly. So here's what we're going to do. You guys were already able, in your groups at the beginning of class, to reach out and to ask someone a question as far as what was meant or needed to be able to do the questions on the worksheet. Some of you are going to be able to go through and start busting off these objectives in the handbook quite quickly. I'm going to go ahead and have us peek at number 1 really fast, just to make sure we're all on the same page as far as realizing, hey, these are actual buttons in the calculator, giving you actual description as to what they do and how to use them. So for instance, when you guys were going to go graph this, what did you input into your calculator? Uh-huh. -2x. Why is it going to be mad at me? Yeah. So a very common mistake of those just getting used to the calculator is to use the minus sign when really you needed a... So there are tons of little things that can happen. You just have to kind of keep your wits about you. I wanted to show you an error really fast just so you make sure that, well, just so you have something to do if you see it. You have 2 different options. One, you just quit and oh, well, I give up. What's number 2 say? Why would we want to hit number 2 instead? It says something's wrong. It's telling me exactly what to look at. What's wrong? I put a minus and it needs to be a negative. Now all of a sudden when I go to graph, now mine's nice and pretty. Yours would be too if you were in what, Zoom? Any idea what Zoom is right now? Yeah, I'm in Zoom Standard. There are all sorts of different Zooms. What's a Zoom from last year, those of you that use the calculator, that you did like? Oh, did you ever use the Zoom? Maybe you didn't need to.
Sometimes trig.
In and out, in and out. Zoom trig can help sometimes with degrees and radians when we get into the unit circle. There is one called Zoom Fit that a lot of kids like to use, and it only sometimes works. I'm just giving you some warnings. I personally like Zoom Box. I like to zoom out, zoom out, zoom out, and say, there it is, and put a little zoom, like a click and drag box over it. I like Zoom Box. Anyway, there's a lot of different Zooms you can use. But what's the long story short? Number 1, having it in the handbook and being like, I know what I'm doing. You should have sketched them. Now, yes, I'm totally cheating, if it lets me. Haha. Yay. Can you do that? No. So what did you do with your pencil? You went ahead and showed a line with an intercept at 5 and then a slope of down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. But you did not need to do points. It was just a sketch saying, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and do the following. Let me give you guys 5 minutes to get as far in the handbook as possible. Some of you will get really far. Some of you will just get a little ways. To some extent, homework tonight is going to be getting up through a certain page. So let me give you 5 minutes just to see how fast you can go, following the directives and answering in the handbook itself, either with a sketch or with an answer, what they're asking of you. Oh, you don't have the handbook either. Is it right in the hallway? Jason, is your locker in the hallway too? Go ahead and go quickly and go get your handbook. That way you guys can write down. It's okay. It's okay. Thank you. I know you guys haven't gotten super far, but have you been able to tell at the very beginning of the handbook what it's basically all talking about? What's the big category for the first few pages of the handbook? Yeah, functions, and specifically their quadratic's an example, but you have a cubic on number 3. Graphing, specifically their graphs. Then around page 3, now it goes to tables and has you playing with a functions table instead, playing with different features, maximums, minimums, intersects, etc., etc., etc. Has anybody looked at the end of the packet to see how many total objectives there are? Yeah, there's 20 total. So ideally, if we have calculator worksheet number 2 that's due on Thursday, and we have today and tomorrow to go over the handbook, how far do you think you need to get through the handbook tonight? Well, if there's 20 total, we only have 2 days to really cover it. Yeah, let's get through 10 tonight. Sound good? Do you have an idea of what you're doing as far as the objectives? You're looking at the information above if you need to, and then you're trying to repeat it or recreate it in your calculator. There's one of them that's kind of weird. For instance, have you guys gotten to number 3 yet? What do you answer for number 3? Did anybody get a little confused on that? Like it was like, hey, get it on your calculator. Well, you don't really need to draw the sketch because the sketch is already there, right? But what is a way that you could answer number 3? What's it actually asking you to do? Yeah. So couldn't you write down what your window settings are? Does that make sense? So if you hit the window button really quickly, doesn't it show you like an X min, X max, Y min, Y max on your calculator? So for number 3, you don't really need to show me the sketch. It's already there. But show me the window that you got that's pretty similar. Now, a few of you are like, it actually shows what. Okay, but did you try it before the answer? Aw, cheaters. So some of you are just smart and you looked ahead. But for others of you, your window might have been a little bit different and still basically showed you the exact same graph by using zoom ins and zoom outs, etc. So number 3 was a little weird because there is an answer that they were like, this is our window. But I was curious as far as what window you found that looks similar and how close you were to the actual one below. There might be another few like weird answers, but you can bring those tomorrow. You're trying to get numbers 1 through 10 tonight in the handbook. Does that make sense? Okay. You're trying to get through objective 10 in the handbook. Right now, let's go ahead and grab out that colored pen. Calculator worksheet number 1. Some of you are realizing that the handbook would have, should have, could have been quite helpful last night if you got stuck on some of these buttons. But let's go ahead and get the answers down. That way you have the correct answer. And then tonight, after doing numbers 1 through 10, or maybe you want to go a little bit further. I don't remember exactly where intersections show up, but they are in the handbook. I want to make sure that you guys have the answers that way tonight. If you do have something wrong, you can go ahead and after working through the handbook, go back and then see if you can figure out how to get the right answer. Does that make sense for calculator worksheet number 1? Here we go. Letter A. Wait a minute, pause. Hold up. What are you writing with right now? If it's a pencil, put it down. You're not allowed to correct with pencil. It might lead eventually to public humiliation if you're just like, ha, 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 ha. No. Get out a colored pen. This is time to correct. Okay? So calculator worksheet number 1. Here we go. Letter A. P.S. If you get it right, put a little check mark. If you get it wrong, write the right answer. Okay? Number 1, y is equal to negative 7.568. You guys agree? Someone who got letter A right, go ahead and call out. What's letter B? X is equal to? Perfect. I agree. But now you're not allowed to answer again. Number 2, letter A. What is the 0 of this line? Someone new, call it out. Right in the front. 4.3 is a good try. Who has another one? 3.34? Yes. Anybody do more decimal points than that, though?
3.336.
Yeah, that's where I stopped too. Good. That's where calculus would stop also. Heads up, we always do 3 decimal places in calculus, not sig figs. We'll leave that for Ken. Letter B. What is the intersection point of the 2 lines? There's a lot going on this one. Let me go ahead and just write it. It'd be 5.04. I apologize. Started to write the 4 first. 5.042 and negative 2.388. Number 3, letter A. Kyle, what'd you get?
5 and 6.
I agree. Anybody have some more decimal points for me, though? Keep going. 5 point what? I'm going to add a 4 on there. And how about the other one? 6 point? Now, here's why I bring this up. They both had a 5 and a 6 in the answer. Here's the struggle. Isn't 5.0 a lot different than 6.9? Careful. Get me some decimals in there. Letter B, you definitely had to play with the zoom if you were using your calculator to do it. Some of you just did the math and you were like, plug in 2. Final answer would have been y equals negative 53. You guys concur? And then number 4, there's a lot going on. But who can give me one of the x values of the point of intersection? Yeah, 5.35. I'm going to add a decimal point. 5.35, close, 3, when rounded. I think it might have been 2 something. However, here's a struggle. Earlier in the problem, they were asking sometimes just for like x values, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes they were asking for specific points. Make sure you're putting x's and y's for the points, because the point needs both coordinates. So 5.353 and then 1.534. The other point would have been 6.564 and 1.888. Why is calculator worksheet number 1, for the most part, pretty easy if you know how to use your grapher. If you don't, there's the handbook. Work through button by button what each of them do. And it's going to really, really help. But if you knew how to use your graphing calculator, why was this worksheet mostly easy? Yeah, maybe you know what you're doing. And as far as zoom, is there anything that's outside of a normal 10 by 10 grid? Just one. All the rest, zoom standard was good. What's the struggle? Look at calculator worksheet number 2. What's the struggle with calculator worksheet number 2? You have some numbers that are not going to be in zoom standard. You're going to have to be playing with your zoom ins, your zoom outs. You're going to say there are no answers to, but if you just had the right zoom, maybe there would be answers to. So you're going to have to get a little bit deeper in, do you really know how to use your calculator? It's good if you know how to use the basics, but you're going to have to be able to do more than the basics for calculator worksheet number 2. And you're definitely going to need to, I would say, go to your handbook at some point for help in the directions. Now, I think the big word, big words, for this entire worksheet, calculator worksheet number 1, pause real quick. Everybody have the answers written down? Anybody get them all right? Okay, cool. For those of you that missed at least one, go back and see if you can figure out what went wrong. Maybe it was just some decimals that you left off, but maybe it was something a little bit deeper. In your graphing calculator, let me go find them. Almost everything that was in that entire handbook could have been found under the second trace menu. Value. What is the value when x is equal to? 0. What is the 0 of the line? Number 5, intersect. What is the point of intersection? Now, guess what the graphing calculator handbook does in the first half or so of the handbook? It goes through every single one. Now, you might need to go a little bit past number 10 to get into the minimums and maximums if those show up in calculator worksheet number 2. But here's the long story short. What's your objective for tomorrow? Should you start on calculator worksheet number 2 right away? I wouldn't say that's your initial objective. What's your initial objective? Do the handbook. So for tomorrow, handbook numbers 1 through 10. Some of you might want to go a little bit farther because that will allow you to actually start on calculator worksheet number 2 if you do go beyond. Because just a warning, calculator worksheet number 2 is a bit of a beast, and the earlier you work on it, the better. And it's not quite as second nature as calculator worksheet number 1. Do you guys hear the warning? Are you going to heed it? Get as much work done as you can now until the bell rings. Sound good? All right. Yes, sir. Which one? Oh, the one that I passed out? Number 2? Did anybody else not get number 2? Yeah. Does anybody have anything funky that's going on with their calculator? Any weird error messages? Okay. Yeah. Let me pause the video real quick.